So this is our third pen talk, I believe. I missed last week because I've been kind of in this funk lately, and it got really bad this past weekend where I just didn't get anything done. Like when you just kind of are so overwhelmed with everything and then you just can't do anything? Yeah, that was me. And then I had to cancel going to a dinner party that a friend was hosting. So then that made me feel like I was just like an awful flaky friend, and yeah. So yesterday was just kind of a bust. So yeah, so that's kind of the whole past week has been kind of like eh. And then today I took a half day off of work, just to kind of, since I didn't get anything done yesterday, I needed some time to come home and, just do laundry and get all those like things done that, yes, I could do them after work, but like they were going to be hanging over my head until I got them done and just causing me more stress. So I was like, you know what? I don't have anything, I don't have any big projects or anything done or due at work. So I'll just take the afternoon off. I'll come home. I'll get my laundry done. I'll get things cleaned up. And I feel so much better. Oh, so worth it. So don't forget, your mental health is important. If you need to take a mental health day, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so today what I kind of want to talk about is a couple of new acquisitions that I've gotten since the last time we talked. And there's a cat that's going to jump up on the table. Well, maybe not. Hi, fat cat. Hello. A couple of new acquisitions, and then some questions that were sent to me about kind of my life as a grad student and things related to grad school and academia and things like that. So acquisition, sorry, now there's a cat wandering around. Interesting thought. So the cats, I don't remember if I've ever said this, these cats are not my cats. I am cat sitting right now. So the cats, and there's a cat. That's a fat cat. So these cats are here. They were only supposed to be here for spring semester. Now they're going to be here all summer. But they will be leaving for sure before the end of July because that's when our lease here at this current apartment is up. So their time is kind of coming to an end, and in a way I'm kind of sad about it, and in a way I'm not. Like these are the first pets that I've ever had that have been completely, like, really my responsibility, and it's been tough. It's a lot to kind of take in all at once. So it'll be nice to kind of have a breather after they're gone. And who knows, maybe it'll be a week and they'll be like, I want another kitty. And then I just have to convince Wesley to let me get another cat. So I did promise him I wouldn't just come home with a cat because that's awful. So I'll have to convince him to get another cat. But who knows, maybe once they're gone I'll be so like, oh, my space. Who knows? I won't have cats sitting on my pens like I do right at this second. Anyway, new things. So last time I was mentioning that I had ordered a new bag and I was waiting to get it. So I got it like a day or two after I recorded that video. So I've been using it now for a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever, however long. So I've been using it for a while now. So I feel like I can offer some thoughts on it. Oh my God, fat cat, really? Really? Hey there, buddy. Hey there. How about we move you off of the desk? Okay. Nope, now you're done. Okay, I've ruined the fun. Anyway, big on with you. Okay, so the bag came. I've been using it for a little while now, and I love it. I'm so glad I went with this bag as opposed to one that was far more expensive. So this bag cost me $150. Full disclosure, I don't feel like there's any shame to say how much I spent on something. This bag cost me $150, and it's of a similar style to bags that cost twice that. Like, I was looking at some other bags that were $300, and they had the exact same measurements, the same kind of style of bag, and so it just seemed like, okay, either this bag was going to be really awful, and I was going to see why those other bags were $300, or it was just people trying to make a lot of money. And I think it was just people trying to make a lot of money. So the type of bag that I got, it's a messenger type bag. It's meant to fit an iPad, although I don't have an iPad. I used to, but I don't have one anymore. But it's kind of like I think it's like 9 inches wide by about 11 inches tall by a couple of inches deep. And so this is kind of a common size that I see on a lot of websites that make these, you know, leather bags, is kind of the iPad satchel kind of size. So this one is made by a company called White Buffalo Republic. They have their little logo stamped in the front there. I will link to their website down below. You actually buy it through Etsy, but they have like a standalone website. But what's really interesting is on Etsy, they list these bags and they have pictures of the specific bag that you'll be buying. So because they don't always use perfect cuts of leather. Some of their leather has markings and brands and stuff on it. And so they want to make sure that you know exactly what you're getting and that you can choose like, oh, that one is a little too imperfect for me. I want this one instead. So that was really nice, and I really appreciate that because I wanted a bag that had a little bit more character to it. So this bag on the back has some brand marks on it and some, you know, kind of scars and stuff, which I think is awesome. And it was so great that I was able to see that when I bought the bag. So I highly recommend them. So this bag on the back, it has this pocket that goes down. And then has this flap, and then the inside. This bag is also really interesting because the entire inside is burnished, so it's smooth, like you don't have that like kind of furry feeling that you often get with leather stuff, which I like because to me it kind of feels more durable and more high-end that way. So yeah, I really like that. It's not the thickest leather I've ever seen. I had sent a message to the guy who runs the company, and he said they use like 5 or 6 ounce leather, which, I mean, it's sturdy, but it's not unnecessarily sturdy, if that makes sense. You know, I've seen some websites that say they use 8 or 10 ounce leather, which is great if you're a guy who's 6 foot tall and super muscly. But like I am, you know, I don't have the broadest shoulders. Things hurt if they're too heavy and I'm carrying them on my shoulder for too long. So for me, this strikes the perfect mix between like being durable and hefty without being too durable and hefty, if you know what I mean. So it has a little key keeper thing, which is kind of neat, but I wish it would just have like a ring on the end because I keep a carabiner on my keys, and this little dealy bopper is kind of too small to fit over my carabiner. So it's great if I just want to put my car keys in there, but I can't actually put on my keys. So there's that. And then it has a couple of pockets along the back. And that's it. So you can see it's pretty narrow. There's not a ton of room in there. So I've definitely had to kind of pare down what it is that I carry, but I think that's a good thing because now I don't wind up with just a whole bunch of extra junk floating around in my bag. It's down to the bare essentials and things like my little bag with like my first aid kit and my lady things and things like that in it. I realized I don't need to carry that with me all the time. You know, I don't need to bring that with me to the grocery store. So I left that in my desk at work. So it's in my desk at work, which is when I tend to need it. You know, I tend to get to work and I realize, oh my God, my hands are super dry. So I put on some lotion and I put on perfume because I always forget when I'm at home. So I don't need it with me all the time. So it's kind of learning things like that, learning how to compartmentalize, which the smaller bag has done for me. I also just realized this bag has quite a bit of marks right here, kind of on the inside flap, which is interesting and cool. And you can also see it's kind of changing color because I've been carrying this with me. You can see that it's kind of changing color because this is kind of where the flap sits. So I think that's really awesome. They also have them in a darker color, but I really enjoy this lighter color because then I can kind of see it as it, you know, changes color and everything. Another nice thing is because the bottom is very kind of square, it will stand up all on its own, which was another one of my requirements. So overall, very happy with it. I'm sure I'll do an actual well, maybe I'll do a full proper review in a little while, but kind of initial impressions are that I really like it, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who's looking for this type of bag. They have other types of bags as well, bigger bags and smaller bags and stuff. Anyone who's looking for this type of stuff, I would highly recommend this. And what's really interesting about this company is, so it's run by a guy, an American guy, but the guys who actually make the bags are down in, I think, Guatemala. I apologize if that's wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Guatemala. And, you know, you might be like, oh, Made in America. Made in America is great and all, don't get me wrong. But like these guys who are down in Guatemala making these bags, like these guys are leather workers. This is their trade. This is their skill. So now we're employing these people who have this skill and trade and helping them to bring in, you know, financial prosperity to their area and helping them and helping their families. So to me, I don't see this as a bad thing. Like, I don't mind that it was made there by a skilled leather craftsman. Like, why should I be upset about that? So that's really cool. I like that. I like that it, it's made by guys who know leather. And so I've been really happy with it. I don't regret it at all. The only thing I wish that it had was I wish it had a little handle like here so that I could grab it by the handle. Because every so often I'll go to pick it up like out of my car or something, and I reach for a handle there and there's no handle. So sometimes I just grab it by this side here. I just grab it and pick it up like that, which works just fine, or I grab the edge of the strap or whatever. Either way. So that's the bag. Then a couple things in the bag. So the first thing is I finally got something from Knock. My older brother had gotten a Lookout. We'd kind of been talking about them. Both of us were kind of like, yeah, we kind of like them, but we're just not really sure. My brother is going to Rome this summer for like an internship. So he wanted a pen case, so he decided to get a Lookout. He got it in the steel and mango colorway, which was kind of my second choice. I was so devastated when they got rid of the mandarin and mango, and I was just like, oh. So then the steel and mango was kind of my second choice. Well, then they brought back the mandarin and mango, I guess. I don't know. It's back now, so whatever. They brought this back, and then, of course, he had the steel and mango, so I couldn't get that one. So this is the mandarin and mango, and I love it. It's great. I really enjoy the 3-pen holster kind of thing because that's how many pens I need. And I love this case. It just feels so great. It's so awesome. I'll do a full review of this guy sometime soon, but I love it. Awesome. Then the other thing is something that just came today. Okay, so I can get this bag off my lap. Okay. This just came today, so this is kind of, take these as first impressions because I have barely gotten a chance to use this thing, but I'm kind of excited about it. So this is a traveler's notebook that I ordered off of Etsy way back in March. I don't know if I've mentioned this. I don't remember mentioning it at all. I ordered it back in March, and at the time the guy said that there was a 4 to 6 week lead time, which is fine. I was kind of like, okay, that's fine. I mean, I was so taken by how beautiful it was that I was like, whatever, I'll wait that long. Well, then a couple days after I ordered it, the guy who makes them is a disabled veteran, so his health kind of flares up from time to time. So then he said, okay, my health is kind of not doing so great, so I need to push the lead time to 6 to 8 weeks. So then I kind of assumed, okay, well, I guess I'm falling within that group. That's fine. 6 to 8 weeks is no big deal. Well, I'm pretty sure it's been more than 8 weeks. Then again, his father passed away in that time. I mean, he's very good at putting up shop updates when big things happen, and it's gonna, mean that he has to take a week away from the shop or whatever. So I kind of knew what was going on, and I had emailed him, just been like, hey, kind of where am I in the process? And he responded to me super quick. So I was never concerned that I wasn't gonna get it, but I was also very impatient. So this has been a lesson in patience for me, which has probably been a good thing. I probably needed that. Anyway, so this is a traveler's notebook. It's a field note size. It's from the guy, it's called Yellow Birch Outfitters, and I will also link to that Etsy shop down below. This is the Expedition notebook, I want to say it's called, and this is the signature one. So this is kind of, it's kind of made to commemorate kind of, I think his rebranding kind of. Anyway, so this is kind of a special edition one. He also does other ones, and he does full-size kind of Midori ones as well. I think one of them is called the Wayfarer. I can't remember. Anyway, this guy I've been super excited about. It appears more red in the pictures on his website, whereas mine looks a little bit more orange, which is fine. I really like the color regardless. So it's a traveler's notebook. It's a pretty beefy guy. He says it's made with 9-ounce leather, so it's, pretty thick. Has a nice thick beefy band on it, which I like. So I got this guy, and it's interesting. I'll need to contact him before I do a full review of this, because it's interesting how the inside is finished. Like, the inside is smooth instead of having kind of like the nap that I'm used to. So I don't know if maybe it's burnished or if there's some sort of sealant on it. I don't really care either way, but I'll have to send him a message and ask him kind of a couple of questions before I do, a full review, because I want to know, I want to know my stuff. I don't want to be saying something is one thing and then have it turn out that it's not that one thing. You know what I mean? So again, this one has a little bit of character on the back, and I enjoy that so much. So Then I also got, he also makes these leather folders that go inside of a traveler's notebook. So I got this leather folder to go in here. And I think I might have to change out the elastics because I kind of tore up the elastics a little bit when I was super excited to kind of take it all apart and put my stuff in. So I'm thinking I might change out the elastic. I have some extra elastic from the Midori elastic refill kit from Wesley's Midori, and he doesn't like the brown stuff, so I might put brown elastic in here just because, yeah, I did that. That was my fault. I was not careful. I was so excited to get it. That was another benefit of taking the half day off, was as soon as the mail got here, I was like, whoosh, down to the mailbox and I grabbed it. So, but anyway, so far I'm super happy about it. And I said something to Wesley about, you know, he asked, you know, did you like it? Was it worth it? And I was like, yeah, it was really worth it. I don't know that if I had known I was going to have to wait this long, if I still would have, you know, purchased it or not. And he said, well, yeah, but you're not waiting anymore. And I was like, well, yeah, okay, true. So the fact is that, yes, I had to wait a little while, and that's fine. You know, it's not like I was, you know, it's not something I needed. Let's be realistic. So I had to wait a little while, yes, but I'm not waiting anymore. So I shouldn't let that wait color how I feel about the actual product itself. There's a difference between the process and then the product itself. And eventually I'd like to kind of, you know, do one of these pen talks a little bit about kind of ordering on Etsy or ordering custom items like that, and kind of, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Not that this is an ugly or bad, just that it made me think about that. So a thought for the future. I'll have to write that down. Okay, so that's the new stuff that I have. So now I want to talk about some questions that I got from a reader of the blog. And a reminder, if you are watching this on the blog, I have to think about which direction because the camera mirrors everything. Okay, so up here in the corner, there should be a little contact button. So if you want to send me any questions or comments that you don't really feel necessarily relate to a specific post, or maybe you want it to be a little bit more private, either way, feel free to hit that button and it goes directly to my email, and that way I can see it and I can respond to it. I don't know if I can respond like by emailing you. I would assume that it can, that I can respond to your email that you use for it. Either way, or I can, you know, if you want to send me something you'd like to hear me talk about in one of these pen talks, that works too. So this week's kind of discussion topic is not about pens or paper or ink or anything. It's about kind of my former life now. So it was from Nanook. I don't know if that's an actual name or screen name. Anyway, Nanook, whatever. So thank you for contacting me, and I appreciate your questions. And it's about time that I kind of talk a little bit about these things. So the questions are kind of, why am I not working in science research? What type of physics did I do, and, you know, kind of how does that affect things? What is academic life like as a career, kind of from a student's perspective? You know, obviously I wasn't in that career for very long, but I did see a lot of it. I interacted with a lot of professors and things like that. And then also, on a more practical note, trying to do math or physics with fountain pens. And this reader said that they were left-handed, so that is something I have no experience with. But I can talk a little bit about, in general, doing math and science with fountain pens. So first question, why am I not working in science research? So for anyone who's new here, at the end of fall semester last year, so in December of last year, I left grad school. Technically, I'm on a leave of absence right now for the full calendar year of 2015, but at this point, it's not necessarily looking like I'm going to head back because there's just a lot of reasons. There's a lot of things that made me very unhappy with being in grad school and kind of being a researcher in physics. I do have my master's in physics, so, you know, I did get something out of grad school. It's not like I just left and didn't get anything out of it. But, so I was working in particle physics. I guess this kind of answers the second question as well. I was working in experimental high-energy particle physics. The experiment I worked on was the CMS detector at CERN. And I mean, I've worked on a couple of experiments. In undergrad, I worked on the IceCube experiment, which is a cosmic ray detector down in Antarctica. And then in grad school, I spent a summer working on the Pierre-Auger detector, which is another huge, large-scale particle detector, cosmic ray detector down in Argentina. And then what I was going to do my thesis research and everything on was the CMS detector at CERN, at the LHC. So there were a lot of reasons that made me really unhappy with being a researcher in physics. But kind of like what really kind of solidified it for me was kind of the specific experience I had. So in physics, and especially in particle physics, where it's very global and you have people working on vastly different time zones and everything, you're kind of expected to be on all the time. Like, you're always on duty. I was getting emails all the time from collaborators and stuff. I was getting emails at 3 o'clock in the morning. And of course I wasn't expected to answer them then, but it's constant. You never get away. And as a grad student as well, there's kind of this feeling that you should always be in the lab, or you should always be, if you're not in the lab, you should be working on homework, or you should be doing grading. Like, you always should be doing something. And it's hard to kind of get away from the lab and from school and all of that. And, like, I had friends who, they were my physics friends, but they had girlfriends who did other stuff or whatever. And they would get, one of my guy friends was like, "Oh, I'm so glad my girlfriend's away for the weekend, because then I can be in the lab all weekend and she won't say anything." And I'm like, are you kidding me? I live for my time away from the lab. Like, I live for my hobbies. And so, kind of going off of that, we had some guys from CERN come over, and they were giving a talk, and they were kind of reviewing our lab, because our lab was in a manufacturing process, so we had to kind of have outside people come in and make sure that we were up to their standards and everything. So these guys came in, they were reviewing our lab, and they were going to give a talk. And then after that, the high energy group, we kind of took these guys out to dinner. So a bunch of us grad students went, and professors went, and everything. So as we were walking from campus to the steakhouse where we were going for dinner, I was talking to one of the guys from CERN. And it was very interesting because you could really tell that, like, physics was his life. He worked at CERN, which is in Switzerland, but his family lived in Germany. And, like, he, I think, held a professorship at a university in Germany as well. So he was commuting hundreds of kilometers, not a day, but, like, kind of, on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. He was hundreds of kilometers away from his family. And he was totally okay with that. His life was physics, and kind of everything else came after physics. And I'm sure he wouldn't say it like that, but that was kind of how it appeared to me, was that he put physics first, obviously. Because to me, if you're going to live in an entirely different country than your family's in, you're putting that other thing first. I just heard a weird noise. Anyway, and at that moment, I realized, like, wow, I don't want physics to be my life. I love physics. Don't get me wrong. I love physics. I love math. I love science. But I don't want to be one of those people. I don't want it to be my entire life. I don't want it to be all that I have. And especially, like, kind of like how I approach, a job and employment. Like, the current job I have, I don't love it. It's not the best job I've ever had. But the nice thing about it is that when I'm not at work, I don't think about work. This past weekend, I didn't think about work at all. I had to really think hard to think about, oh my gosh, what am I going to do Monday morning when I get in? Because I'd completely forgotten. I don't have to answer emails. I don't have anyone calling me. When I'm done with work, I'm done with work. And that's it. So I very much enjoy being able to separate my work life from my personal life. Basically I view work as, this is a way that I get funds so that I can do things that I want to do. I live for my hobbies. I live for my other interests other than work. So to me, it's not necessary to be doing a job that I love. I mean, I would prefer to like it, of course, but so that's kind of how I view it. And a lot of times in physics and in science, you have to dedicate yourself 100% to the job, because it's hard otherwise. Like in physics, and I guess this kind of gets into academic life as a career. So the way that it kind of works, at least in physics from what I saw, granted, I was at a Big Ten university, I was at a research university for grad school. So, but the school that I went to for undergrad was a very small college. It's not a research university. It's what I would call a teaching college. So I've kind of seen both ends of the spectrum. So at the school that I went to for undergrad, the professors were there to teach. They were in their offices all the time. They weren't doing research, they were teaching and they were helping students, which I really appreciated as an undergrad. I mean, yes, I missed out on some research opportunities that I could have gotten if I went to a Big Ten university or a big, huge research university. But at the same time, it was really nice to know that I could go to my professors and they'd be there. And there was, I didn't have to go search for them in the lab. I was there to learn. I was there to build my foundation. So then when I got to grad school, I knew things. I had actually focused on my classwork first and foremost versus research. So I like that. Oh, I have to grab my water bottle. I'm talking up a storm and I'm getting thirsty. Okay, so that was, and that I could totally do. I love teaching. I would love to teach as a career. But there's not an infinite number of jobs doing that, so it's a lot to pin your hopes on that you can get a job like that. And you have to kind of be willing to go wherever the job is. And that's kind of a constant thing across science and, physics careers especially, is that you don't necessarily get to say, okay, like I want to live in Minneapolis, I'm going to get a job here as a high-paid researcher or as a university professor. Especially if you want to stay in academia, you don't necessarily get to pick where you work. You kind of have to, at least at the beginning, take whatever job you can get, wherever that might be. And I wasn't really okay with that. So there's that. So that's kind of the non-research, high-powered kind of side of it. At a research university, it's not really that much better. So, I was a grad student. I was one of many grad students. We had a lot of professors there. To me, it felt like the professors didn't actually do physics. Granted, yes, they were in the lab, and it kind of varies from professor to professor, of course. Like in high energy research, a lot of times these professors, in addition to being researchers, they also had to hold kind of, what's the word that I'm looking for? Why can I not think of the word that I want? They have to hold administrative positions as well. So that obviously eats up a lot of time, and so they don't get to be in the lab as much as they would like. But even still, like when you're a professor, you have a lot of administrative duties that cut into your lab time. So you're not even actually doing that much research. So this is, for people who aren't familiar with kind of careers in the sciences, at least for physics, this is kind of the impression of how I got that it went. So, you do undergrad, you go to grad school, right? You spend between 4 and 7, 10 years, however long it takes, getting your PhD, during which time you are paid practically nothing. It's very hard to live in grad school on a grad student stipend, depending on where you live, whether it's cheap or expensive. And if you live by yourself, like I was doing, it's very hard. So, but, that's not a big deal. You just get really good at being poor. So, it's not the end of the world. I wouldn't say that's a good reason to not go to grad school. So you spend however long, being a grad student and, doing your thesis and everything like that. Then after you do that, if you want to possibly become a, research professor, then you do a postdoc. Generally not at the university that you were at for grad school. You go somewhere else to do a postdoc. And again, these are things that you have to apply for. And, unless you're a super stellar student who's been published a ton of times, you may not have your pick of where you get to go. You may have to kind of go wherever it will take you. And so you do a postdoc, and that can take multiple years, however long. I never really understood how long a postdoc takes. I think it's kind of a predetermined amount of time. But anyway, you do a postdoc, so that takes a couple of years. Then you might do another postdoc to take another couple of years. Okay, so then you might get like an assistant professor position or something like that. So you're non-tenure track. Your situation there is very tenuous. So you do that, and you are still getting paid practically nothing. And by this time, you are in your mid-30s at least. So, and then you might get a tenure track position. So, you could be in your late 30s to early 40s before you are in a tenure track position. And then you have a lab, and then you have to, run your lab and grad students and other postdocs, and then you're sucked into all this administrative business. So to me, that was kind of why I never, that's kind of academic life as a physicist, as a career, as I understood it. And that was just not really that appealing to me. So, you know, take it for what you will. But yeah, that's kind of how that goes. It's a stressful life. It's a hard life. You're constantly fighting for funding. And especially here in the US, the sciences aren't super well funded. And I'm not trying to make a political statement about that. That's just a statement. As in high energy, especially, we were constantly getting our funding cut, and that always was kind of a bummer. So it's tough. It's a tough life. You are really always fighting to validate why it is that you should get money. So, you know, it's not a life for the faint of heart, that's for sure. So, yeah. Okay, so on to the fun things. So the question about doing math or physics with fountain pens. I'm trying to think of what I used when I was in undergrad, because I wasn't using fountain pens when I was in undergrad. I didn't start using fountain pens till I was in grad school. And so in undergrad, I think I just used like ballpoint pens. I've never been big into pencils, so I would use pencils when I had to. I would use pencils when I did homework, but I don't like pencils because I tend to smear pencils because I kind of drag my hand on the paper when I write. So pencils get smeared and I don't like to use them. So I think I just kind of used ballpoint pens and stuff. I never even really got into like gel pens or like, you know, the Pilot G2. So yeah, I think I just used a lot of kind of ballpoint pens. And then when I was in grad school, before I found fountain pens, I think I kind of was trying to find really good pens. So then I was trying out different, you know, ballpoint pens and rollerball pens and stuff. And I think really the secret is that it depends on how big you write. So I had some of my guy friends, they all seemed to write really small, like really tiny. So they had to use pencils, like super thin mechanical pencils, or like really thin, like gel pens or something like that. So if you write super small, your options are going to be really limited because, like with a fountain pen, the finer the nib is, the faster it dries out when it's uncapped. And when you're sitting in class, I mean, there's some exceptions, but a lot of times when I was sitting in class, it'd be like, okay, I'd write something down, and then the professor would be talking, and I'd want to listen, not write. So then, you know, it's like, okay, well, either I have to cap my pen, or, which is not a very, you know, not super efficient, or I have to leave it sitting open. Well, with a fine nib, it's going to dry out super fast if you just leave it sitting there. So that was always kind of my problem with using fountain pens during math and physics classes. Doing homework is a whole different story. I loved using them for doing homework, especially because in grad school I would kind of do a rough draft of my homework and then do a final draft, which maybe sounds kind of silly, but during my first semester I had a professor who, a math professor, who he wanted our homework to be perfect when we turned it in. He didn't want to see too many steps. He didn't want to see silly algebra steps. He didn't want to see mistakes. He didn't want to see stuff crossed out. He wanted you to start, boom, 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 essential steps, answer. That's what he wanted. So it kind of, and I really liked that. Like I realized like, yeah, why am I showing them that I can add and divide and do, you know, I'm in grad school. I shouldn't be showing that. So I would kind of do a rough draft where I would, you know, do all the work and write everything out and then come back after I'd solved all the problems and then write out my nice final draft on nice clean paper and everything. So for my rough drafts, I could use whatever nib I wanted. If I only fit 3 lines on a page with a super broad italic nib, who cares? I usually fished scratch paper out of recycle bins anyway, so whatever. And I could use fun colors, and so that was really fun. And then on my final draft of my homework, I would usually use something like a Safari with a fine nib that I could, you know, write with for a long period of time, and like a blue-black ink. But I write bigger, I think, than a lot of people do. So, like, this, I guess this notebook has, I'm pretty sure this is 5mm ruling, and you can see that I write decently large. Or like here, you can see this is decently largely written. So for me, the whole issue of, you know, trying to fit everything, like subscripts and stuff and superscripts, was never an issue for me because I write large enough that I can easily make those smaller notations as well. So I think if you really want to use fountain pens for doing math and physics, and you're finding it hard to fit, you know, to make the teeny tiny little guys, I would say, you know, first of all, try an extra fine nib. Or if you really want something fine, go with a Japanese fine, like a Pilot fine nib. Like especially something like a vanishing point with a fine nib is kind of like the ideal solution, because then, you know, when you're in class and your professor goes on a long rant, you can click the pen, close it up, and then you're ready to go when they're ready to go again. It's kind of loud, but what do you do? But if that's not even helping, then I think either you have to decide, do you really want to use fountain pens to do your work? Because if you do, you need to learn to write bigger, and that's all there is to it. And if you don't want to learn to write bigger, then I'd say, you know, you need to find something else. You use a gel pen. And at that point, I'd recommend something like a 0.5 millimeter Pilot Juice, or even like a point. I haven't used the 0.38. I have to imagine that I wouldn't enjoy that at all. But, you know, something really fine like that. And the nice thing about like those gel pens is that they're unlike the G2s, which I find to be kind of blobby. The Pilot Juice are very fast drying. They're super smooth. They're super great to write with. I never have problems with them. So that's kind of my recommendation. If you really want to do your work using fountain pens, write bigger or get a finer nib. Either way, or some combination of the two. But like I'd say with how big I write, I could comfortably do physics or math with a medium nib. I just won't be able to cram quite as much in. You know, it's going to be more spaced out, and that's okay. Or if you don't really want to do that stuff for fountain pens, then get a really good gel pen. Because sometimes there are things that fountain pens are just not good for. Fountain pens are just not always the best for everything. And I find that like taking class notes in, you know, physics classes or math classes are one of those things that fountain pens are just not the best at. And that's okay. I do highly recommend doing your homework with them, because then you kind of have more control over how often you pause and things like that. Sorry, bumped the table. So maybe, you know, you find a really good gel pen to do your classwork with, like in class, and then you do your homework with your favorite fountain pen. And that's a happy compromise that won't cause you too much stress when you're sitting in class and your pen's all dried up. Because I've done that, and that kind of was like, ugh, ain't nobody got time for that. So yeah, so that's all I got. This one's been a little bit longer, but hopefully it's been interesting. We'll see. If you would like to hear about something, you know, maybe, yeah, either physics or science or grad school related, or pen related, paper related, notebook related, anything, whatever, cat related. Not that I have a whole lot of insight to offer on cats, but a little bit. Pretty much whatever. Feel free to mention it in the comments down below. Feel free to send me a contact form if you're watching this on my blog, or whatever. Feel free to find me on other social network sites. I will have my Twitter and Instagram linked down below. And yeah, I guess I will see y'all next week. Bye.